My name is Rachel Harrison, and at 34 I was the marketing director who built our division from scratch over 8 years. Our company was thriving under CEO Marcus Reynolds, who announced he needed a 2-week vacation. His solution? Appointing his 26-year-old daughter Stephanie as temporary general manager. She had just finished her MBA and needed real-world experience. On her very first day, she fired me. Just like that. But what happened when her father returned early and screamed, "You fired who?" That is when everything changed. If you are watching this story, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, and hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this wild corporate roller coaster. When I first joined Reynolds Innovations, it was a mid-sized marketing firm with about 50 employees and modest annual revenue of $4 million. Marcus Reynolds had built the company from nothing, and I admired his work ethic and vision. 8 years ago, I was hired as a marketing coordinator, one of just 3 people in the marketing department. Marcus saw something in me from the beginning. He mentored me personally, gave me challenging assignments, and within 2 years I was promoted to marketing manager. The company needed a stronger digital presence, so I developed our first comprehensive digital marketing strategy. The results were immediate and impressive. Our client base expanded by 70% in just 1 year. By my 4th year, Marcus promoted me to marketing director, giving me full control over a team that had grown to 15 talented professionals. Under my leadership, the marketing department became the driving force behind company growth. Our campaigns won 3 industry awards, and I was personally recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 marketing professionals in the industry. The company grew to over 200 employees, and annual revenue increased to $20 million. My department was directly responsible for bringing in 40% of our new business. Marcus and I had a relationship built on mutual respect. We disagreed sometimes, but he valued my opinion and often sought my advice on company direction. I was included in executive meetings and strategic planning sessions. Everyone assumed I would eventually be promoted to vice president of marketing, a position Marcus had mentioned creating specifically for me. My professional success contrasted sharply with my personal life. 6 months ago, my divorce was finalized after 5 years of marriage. My ex-husband and I had grown apart as my career demanded more of my time. We parted amicably, but the emotional toll was significant. Work became my sanctuary, the place where I felt valued and accomplished. I first met Stephanie Reynolds 3 years ago at the company holiday party. Marcus occasionally mentioned his daughter, who was studying for her MBA at a prestigious university. In person, Stephanie was polished and articulate, but had an air of entitlement that made me uncomfortable. She spoke about her business courses with authority but lacked practical experience. During her rare visits to the office, she treated support staff dismissively and seemed more interested in her father's position than the actual work we did. When Marcus announced his vacation plans at our monthly management meeting, no one expected what came next. "I will be away for 2 weeks starting next Monday," he said, looking unusually hesitant. "Stephanie will be stepping in as temporary general manager during my absence." The room fell silent. David Chen, our finance director, cleared his throat. "Is that wise, Marcus? She has no experience with our operations." Marcus waved away the concern. "She just completed her MBA with honors. This is a perfect opportunity for her to get hands-on experience. Besides, it is only for 2 weeks, and all of you experienced managers will be here to support her." After the meeting, several managers gathered in the break room voicing concerns. Elizabeth Wilson from Human Resources seemed particularly worried. "This violates our normal succession protocols. What message does this send to employees who have worked their way up?" I remained diplomatic, though I shared their concerns. "Let us give her a chance. It is only 2 weeks and we can help guide her decisions." The day before his departure, Marcus called me into his office. "Rachel, I am counting on you to help Stephanie adjust. She respects your work, and I know you will make sure the marketing department continues to run smoothly." I nodded, professional as always. "Of course, Marcus. We will manage everything while you are away." He smiled gratefully. "I knew I could count on you. You have always been my most reliable director." Little did I know that those reassuring words would be our last positive exchange for quite some time. As I left his office, I had no idea that within 24 hours my 8-year career at Reynolds Innovations would come crashing down around me. The weekend passed quickly. I spent Sunday evening preparing a comprehensive briefing for Stephanie outlining our current marketing campaigns, pending decisions, and upcoming deadlines. I wanted to give her everything she needed to make informed decisions during her 2-week stint. I believed that proper preparation would help things run smoothly and protect the progress my team had made. In retrospect, my dedication to the company blinded me to the warning signs I should have seen. Monday morning arrived with an unusual tension in the office. I came in early, as was my habit, to prepare for our regular marketing team meeting at 9. When I passed by the executive suite at 8, I noticed Stephanie had already arrived and was directing maintenance staff to remove Marcus's personal items from his office. "The family photos need to go," she instructed a confused maintenance worker. "And bring in the white leather chair from the conference room. This one is too masculine." I greeted her with professional courtesy. "Good morning, Stephanie. Welcome to your first day. I prepared a briefing package for you with all our current projects and priorities." She barely glanced at the folder I offered. "Thanks, but I will be implementing my own priorities. I spent the weekend reviewing everything and have identified several inefficiencies." Her tone was dismissive, making it clear my input was unwelcome. By 9:30, Stephanie had called an all-company meeting in the largest conference room. She wore an expensive designer suit and more jewelry than was typical in our business-casual environment. Standing at the head of the table, she surveyed the room with cool confidence. "As many of you know, I am Stephanie Reynolds, and I will be your general manager for the next 2 weeks while my father takes a much-needed vacation." She emphasized my father in a way that reminded everyone of her connection to the CEO. "However, I am not here as Marcus Reynolds' daughter. I am here as a Harvard MBA, with fresh ideas to modernize this company." Jessica Parker, my assistant director, shot me a concerned look across the table. Stephanie continued, "I have reviewed our operations and identified several outdated approaches that need immediate correction. We will be making changes starting today. This company has been successful, but we can do better." For the next 40 minutes, Stephanie outlined her vision, which involved restructuring departments, changing client communication protocols, and revamping our project management system. These were not minor adjustments, but fundamental changes to processes we had carefully refined over years. When she finally opened the floor for questions, David Chen raised his hand. "These changes sound extensive. Have you calculated the implementation costs and potential disruption to ongoing projects?" Stephanie smiled tightly. "I appreciate your concern, David, but my MBA specialized in organizational efficiency. The short-term costs will be offset by long-term gains." I decided to speak up. "Stephanie, we have a major campaign launching next week for Lancaster Hotels. It has been in development for 6 months, and changing our project management system now could jeopardize the timeline." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Rachel, with all due respect, traditional marketing approaches are becoming obsolete. I reviewed your Lancaster campaign, and it lacks innovation. We need to postpone the launch and revise the strategy." Postpone? I could not hide my shock. The client has approved every stage. They have coordinated their own promotional activities around our timeline. Changing direction now would damage our relationship with a $5 million account. Several colleagues nodded in agreement, but Stephanie remained unmoved. "Sometimes we need to take risks to move forward. I will personally contact Lancaster today to explain our new direction." The meeting ended with an uncomfortable silence. As people filed out, Elizabeth Wilson approached me. "That was concerning. She cannot just dismantle established processes on day one." Throughout the day, reports filtered in from across the company. Stephanie had canceled meetings, reassigned projects, and questioned decisions that had been months in the making. By 4 in the afternoon, she had met with every department except marketing. I sent her 2 emails requesting time to discuss the Lancaster campaign, but received no response. At 4:45, as I was preparing notes for the next day's client meeting, my desk phone rang. "Rachel, please come to my office immediately." Stephanie's voice was cool and businesslike. When I entered the CEO's office, now transformed with Stephanie's personal touches, she was reviewing documents and did not look up immediately. "Close the door, please." I complied, then took a seat across from her desk. "Rachel, I have been reviewing the marketing department's performance metrics and personnel evaluations." She finally looked up. I have concerns about the direction and leadership. I am happy to walk you through our strategy and results I offered. Our department has consistently exceeded targets for the past 3 years. Numbers can be manipulated, she replied dismissively. What I see is a department resistant to innovation and overly dependent on a single leader. She slid a folder across the desk. This is a separation agreement. Reynolds Innovations is terminating your employment effective immediately. The shock must have shown on my face because she continued with what seemed like rehearsed lines. This is not personal. Companies need fresh perspectives to grow. I am restructuring the marketing department to be more agile, and that requires different leadership. You cannot just fire me without cause. I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady, despite my racing heart. I have consistently exceeded every performance metric. Stephanie's expression hardened. As general manager, I have full authority to make personnel decisions. Your resistance to new ideas demonstrates why this change is necessary. She checked her watch. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. You have 30 minutes. As I sat there stunned, she added the final blow. I'm only keeping people who are truly useful to the company moving forward. Your separation package includes 2 weeks of severance, which is generous considering the circumstances. Before I could respond further, she pressed a button on her desk phone. Security, please come to the executive suite. Within minutes, a security guard I had known for years looked embarrassed as he followed me to my office. Colleagues watched in shocked silence as I packed 8 years of my professional life into a cardboard box. Jessica tried to speak with me, but the guard politely asked her to step back. Company protocol during involuntary separations, he apologized quietly. As I was escorted to the exit, Stephanie's voice came over the company intercom. Attention all staff. I am announcing the first of several organizational changes. Effective immediately, Rachel Harrison is no longer with the company. All marketing department staff will report directly to me until a new director is appointed. Thank you for your cooperation during this transition period. The glass doors closed behind me as I stood in the parking lot, holding a box containing 8 years of my career terminated in less than 15 minutes by someone who had been in her position for less than 8 hours. The drive home passed in a blur. Traffic lights changed, cars moved around me, but I barely registered any of it. My mind kept replaying the scene in Stephanie's office, searching for something I could have said or done differently. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my shock had begun to give way to anger. I carried the cardboard box into my living room and set it on the coffee table. 8 years of professional achievements reduced to a few framed certificates, family photos, and a potted plant. I had left my laptop and company phone behind, as required, feeling strangely disconnected without the devices that had been constant companions. That first evening, I cycled through emotions like flipping through television channels. Disbelief, rage, humiliation, fear. I had built my identity around my career at Reynolds Innovations. Without it, who was I? My recent divorce had already left me feeling unmoored, and now my professional anchor was gone too. I could not bring myself to tell anyone what had happened that first night. Instead, I poured a glass of wine and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions about the future. My savings would cover expenses for a few months, but I had not planned for sudden unemployment. Sleep evaded me. By morning, exhaustion had dulled the shock, leaving a heavy resignation in its place. I made coffee and opened my personal laptop, updating my resume out of necessity rather than motivation. The task felt surreal. How could I explain being fired after 8 successful years? Would other companies believe me or assume I had done something wrong? Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. What happened? Everyone is in shock. Call me when you can. I hesitated before responding. Fired without cause. Still processing. We'll call soon. Within hours, my phone was flooded with messages from colleagues expressing disbelief and support. Through these conversations, I began to piece together what was happening at the company in my absence. Jessica reported that Stephanie had appointed her friend Samantha Adams, fresh out of business school with no marketing experience, as acting marketing director. The Lancaster campaign had indeed been postponed, infuriating the client, who threatened to take their business elsewhere. 3 other department heads had been called into meetings, with Stephanie emerging looking shaken. By Wednesday, more disturbing news arrived. Brian Mitchell, our creative director and my close colleague for 6 years, had also been terminated. She said my creative approach was outdated, he told me over coffee at a cafe far from the office. Then she brought in some friend from her MBA program to replace me. The guy has never worked in creative marketing. Brian looked shell-shocked, much as I imagined I had 2 days earlier. The office is unrecognizable, Rachel. She is firing anyone who questions her, and bringing in her own people. 4 more gone today. Thursday morning, David from finance called from a burner phone. I cannot talk long. She has IT monitoring communications. The Lancaster account is officially gone. They pulled their $5 million when Stephanie tried to change the approved campaign concepts. 2 other major clients are threatening to follow. Has anyone contacted Marcus? I asked. Elizabeth tried, but his assistant says he is on a digital detox retreat. No phone or email access for the full 2 weeks. By Friday, my professional concern for the company I had helped build began to override my personal feelings of betrayal. Jessica sent a text that made my blood run cold. S ordered IT to delete all marketing files over 1 year old to clean up server space. Your campaign's case studies everything. This went beyond poor management. Stephanie was systematically dismantling years of work and institutional knowledge. The company would not survive 2 weeks of this destruction. That afternoon, I received an anonymous email from a company account. Check the shared drive ASAP, using your personal login credentials while you still can. Evidence of what is happening is being saved there by concerned employees. Using my personal credentials, which apparently had not yet been deactivated, I accessed the shared drive. What I found was disturbing. Employees had been documenting Stephanie's actions, saving emails, recording meetings, and tracking the damage. There were copies of terminated employees' performance reviews showing consistent excellence, screenshots of client communications, expressing alarm, and financial projections, showing the potential impact of lost accounts. This was no longer just about my wrongful termination. This was about saving a company from someone who seemed determined to destroy it from within. On Saturday morning, 1 week after my firing, I made 2 important decisions. First, I backed up all the evidence from the shared drive. Second, I contacted Amy Goldstein, an employment attorney recommended by a former colleague who had navigated a similar situation. Amy agreed to meet me on Sunday. Her office was small but immaculate, and her reputation in employment law was stellar. I brought my documentation, including performance reviews, achievement records, and the evidence gathered by my former colleagues. This is a clear case of wrongful termination, Amy said after reviewing the materials. But it is also much more than that. Based on what you have shown me, Miss, Reynolds is engaging in what could be considered corporate sabotage, whether intentional or through incompetence. What are my options? I asked. We file a wrongful termination suit immediately, Amy explained, but we also document the broader harm being done to the company. This strengthens your case by demonstrating that your termination was not only unjustified but part of a pattern of destructive decision-making. Will this get my job back? The question surprised even me. Despite everything, part of me still cared deeply about the company. Amy's expression was sympathetic but realistic. That depends on what is left of the company when this is over. But what we can definitely pursue is appropriate compensation for your wrongful termination damage to your professional reputation and potentially even additional damages if we can prove malicious intent. I left Amy's office with a strange mix of dread and determination. Legal action had never been my style. I preferred solving problems through communication and collaboration. But Stephanie had left me no choice. This wasn't just about justice for myself anymore. It was about stopping the destruction of a company that 200 people depended on for their livelihoods. Little did I know that while I was meeting with Amy, Marcus Reynolds was boarding a flight back to the city, his vacation cut dramatically short by alarming reports that had finally reached him through channels Stephanie couldn't control. Marcus Reynolds returned to a company in chaos. According to Jessica, who texted me minute-by-minute updates, he arrived at the office Monday morning looking tired and grim. The receptionist, one of the few original employees still at her post, burst into tears upon seeing him. That was his first indication that something was seriously wrong. As Marcus walked through the office, he encountered unfamiliar faces occupying key positions. Conference rooms that should have been buzzing with productive meetings were eerily empty. The marketing department, once the most energetic division, was practically deserted. "Where is everyone?" he demanded of Elizabeth Wilson, who had somehow survived Stephanie's purge. "And why do I have 17 messages from Lancaster hotels threatening legal action?" Elizabeth, usually composed, looked close to breaking. "Marcus, there have been significant changes since you left. Stephanie has implemented an aggressive restructuring." "What kind of restructuring requires emptying half the office in a week?" Marcus's voice carried through the thin walls. Elizabeth lowered her voice, but Jessica, listening nearby, could still hear. "She began terminating employees on her first day, starting with Rachel Harrison. She fired." Rachel. Marcus's shock was audible even through Jessica's second-hand account. "That is impossible. Rachel practically built our marketing division." Elizabeth led Marcus to the conference room and closed the door, but not before he was heard exclaiming, "You fired? Who?" Inside his former office, now redecorated to Stephanie's taste, father and daughter had what staff described as an explosive confrontation. "What have you done?" Marcus demanded. "Lancaster Hotels was our biggest client." Stephanie maintained her composed facade. "I made necessary changes to modernize operations. Rachel Harrison was resistant to innovation and had to be removed." "Rachel brought in 40% of our new business last year," Marcus countered. "She has won industry awards for her work." "She was taking credit for team efforts," Stephanie claimed, "and her marketing approach was outdated. I have brought in fresh talent with current expertise." Marcus demanded evidence of Rachel's supposed incompetence. Stephanie presented a folder of cherry-picked data and out-of-context communications that painted a distorted picture of my performance. Not trusting his daughter's account, Marcus began his own investigation. He spent hours reviewing emails, personnel files, and financial reports. He personally interviewed remaining staff members who finally felt safe enough to share what had really happened. David Chen provided financial projections showing the company had lost nearly $7 million in accounts in just 1 week. Jessica Parker revealed that the marketing materials for 3 major campaigns had mysteriously disappeared from the servers. Its staff confirmed that Stephanie had ordered the deletion of outdated files, despite their protests about losing valuable assets. By Tuesday afternoon, Marcus had assembled a clearer picture of the devastation. 12 key employees terminated without cause. 5 major clients lost. Countless files and institutional knowledge destroyed. And a leadership team populated with Stephanie's inexperienced friends from business school. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Seeing Marcus's name on the caller ID sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me. Rachel. His voice sounded tired and genuinely remorseful. "I cannot begin to express how shocked and sorry I am about what happened." I remained silent, unsure how to respond. "I have spent the past 2 days uncovering what Stephanie did in my absence. Your termination was completely unjustified, and I want to personally apologize." "Thank you for that," I finally said, my voice more formal than I had ever been with him. "I would like to offer you your position back immediately, with a significant raise and promotion to Vice President of Marketing. We need you, Rachel. The company needs you." The offer I had once dreamed of now felt hollow. "I appreciate the offer, Marcus, but I have already engaged legal counsel regarding my wrongful termination." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I understand. That is your right. Is there anything I can do to make this right?" "My attorney will be in contact with your legal department," I replied, maintaining my professional tone despite the emotional turmoil beneath. "I think it is best if we communicate through proper channels from this point forward." After hanging up, I immediately called Amy to update her on this development. She was not surprised. "This strengthens our position," she explained. "His acknowledgement of wrongful termination and attempt to rehire you confirms that there was no legitimate basis for your firing. We will proceed with our legal strategy." Meanwhile, according to my sources inside the company, Marcus confronted Stephanie again with what he had learned. This time there was no private conference room. In full view of the remaining staff, he revoked her authority. "Your actions have caused incalculable damage to this company and to people who dedicated years of their lives to building it," he reportedly told her. "You will no longer have any role here." Stephanie left the building escorted by security, a mirror image of what had happened to me, and others just days before. But unlike us, she departed not as a victim of injustice, but as the architect of a corporate catastrophe. By Wednesday, Marcus had begun emergency damage control, personally calling lost clients and terminated employees. But for many, including me, the damage could not be undone with simple apologies. Trust had been broken, and the company's reputation had suffered a serious blow. On Thursday morning, I received another call, this time from Michael Thompson, chairman of the board of directors. Ms. Harrison, the board has been briefed on recent events. We would like to meet with you and your attorney to discuss a resolution. When I relayed this to Amy, she smiled for the first time since taking my case. Now we are getting somewhere. The board realizes how serious this is, and they want to contain the damage before shareholders get wind of it. The stage was set for what would become not just a negotiation about my individual case, but a reckoning for a company that had allowed a catastrophic leadership failure. The conference room at Goldstein Legal looked nothing like the sleek modern spaces at Reynolds Innovations. Amy had chosen her office for our meeting with the company representatives, a strategic decision that put them on our territory. Michael Thompson, the board chairman, arrived with Elizabeth Wilson from HR and Gerald Harrison, no relation to me, the company's chief legal counsel. Marcus was notably absent, a fact Amy had predicted. They will keep him away to maintain plausible deniability and protect him legally, she had explained during our preparation session. After introductions, Michael opened with what sounded like a prepared statement. We deeply regret the circumstances of Miss Harrison's termination. The board was not consulted on this decision and does not support it. We would like to resolve this matter quickly and fairly. Gerald slid a document across the table. We are prepared to offer 8 weeks of severance pay, continuation of health benefits for 3 months, and a neutral reference for future employment opportunities. In exchange, we ask for a standard non-disclosure agreement regarding company operations in this settlement. Amy did not even glance at the document. My client was wrongfully terminated after 8 years of exemplary service, during which she helped increase company revenue by over 300%. Your offer is insultingly inadequate. Elizabeth Wilson looked uncomfortable. We understand Miss Harrison's value to the company, but we must consider precedent for other employees. Other wrongfully terminated employees, Amy countered. Because there are at least 11 others from last week alone who have contacted my office. We are exploring the possibility of a class action lawsuit. This clearly came as a surprise to the company representatives. Michael and Gerald exchanged concerned glances. Additionally, Amy continued, we have evidence that Miss Reynolds deliberately deleted valuable marketing assets created by my client, constituting destruction of intellectual property. We also have documentation of client communications indicating that Miss Harrison's termination directly resulted in the loss of accounts worth millions. I watched their faces as Amy methodically laid out the evidence we had gathered. Michael's expression grew increasingly grave while Gerald frantically took notes. Our initial demand is 1 year's salary as severance, full benefits, continuation for 12 months. A public retraction of the termination, formal acknowledgement of Miss Harrison's contributions to the company, and compensation for damage to her professional reputation. Gerald recovered his composure enough to counter. That is excessive for a standard employment termination case. Amy's smile was polite but unyielding. This ceased to be a standard case when Miss Reynolds began systematically dismantling the marketing department and destroying company assets. If we cannot reach a reasonable agreement, we are prepared to file not only for wrongful termination, but also for intentional interference with business relationships and destruction of intellectual property. The meeting ended with the company representatives requesting time to consult with the board. As they left, Michael paused at the door. For what it is worth, Miss Harrison, many of us on the board always viewed you as a valuable asset to the company. This situation should never have happened. His words, while appreciated, did little to repair the damage done. Amy was pleased with how the meeting had gone. They will come back with a better offer. They know we have a strong case. 2 days later, we received the company's response through Gerald. Their new offer doubled the severance to 16 weeks but maintained the non-disclosure requirement. Amy dismissed it immediately. They are still not taking this seriously enough, she told me. Time to increase the pressure. The next day, Amy filed our lawsuit in court, ensuring that it would become public record. Within hours, industry publications picked up the story. Former marketing director sues Reynolds Innovations for wrongful termination and corporate sabotage. The company's response was swift and aggressive. Gerald called Amy directly, his professional courtesy strained. This public filing is unnecessary and damaging to ongoing negotiations. We disagree, Amy replied coolly. Our client's reputation was publicly damaged when she was escorted from the building by security. Transparency is in everyone's interest now. That afternoon, we received an unexpected development. Stephanie Reynolds, through her own attorney, filed a countersuit against me for defamation and theft of confidential company information. She claimed I had stolen marketing concepts and client relationships that rightfully belonged to the company. Amy was unfazed. This is a desperate move from someone who knows she is in trouble. Her countersuit actually helps us by keeping the story in the news and potentially bringing more witnesses forward. She was right. Within days, Brian Mitchell and 4 other terminated employees had joined forces with us, contributing additional evidence of Stephanie's destructive actions. Clients began speaking publicly about their experiences with the new management at Reynolds Innovations, further damaging the company's reputation. The turning point came when an internal investigation mandated by the board and conducted by an independent firm confirmed many of our allegations. The report leaked to business publications detailed how Stephanie had deliberately deleted marketing assets, misrepresented financial data, and terminated high-performing employees without justification. In response to this growing crisis, the board called an emergency meeting. According to David Chen, who still maintained contacts on the board, Marcus was directly confronted about his decision to place his daughter in a position of authority. The board is holding Marcus personally responsible, David reported. They are demanding he fix this mess or face a vote of no confidence. By the end of the week, Gerald Harrison requested another meeting, this time at their corporate headquarters. The board has authorized me to present a significantly improved offer, he explained. Amy advised caution. They are feeling the pressure, but we need to maintain our position. This is when many clients get nervous and settle for less than they deserve. I trusted her judgment, and as we prepared for the meeting, I realized something had changed within me. The anger and hurt remained, but they were now accompanied by a steely determination. This was no longer just about getting compensation for my termination. It was about standing up for professional standards and ensuring that what happened to me and my colleagues could not easily happen again. The Reynolds Innovations headquarters looked different as we entered for our second negotiation meeting. Gone was the usual buzz of activity. Employees moved quietly through the halls, eyes downcast, conversations hushed. The confident energy that had once defined the workplace had been replaced by an atmosphere of uncertainty. This time, Marcus Reynolds himself was present, along with Michael Thompson, Gerald Harrison, and 2 additional board members I recognized from company events. Their expressions were solemn as we took our seats in the executive conference room. Michael opened the meeting. Before we discuss specific terms, I want to acknowledge that the board has conducted a thorough investigation of recent events. We have determined that serious errors in judgment occurred at multiple levels of leadership. Marcus looked noticeably aged since I had last seen him. Rachel, I want to personally apologize again for what happened. I failed in my responsibility as CEO by placing someone without proper experience in a position of authority. Amy maintained her professional demeanor. Apologies are appreciated, but we are here to discuss concrete remedies for the harm done to my client. Gerald presented their new offer: 6 months' salary, as severance, full benefits for 1 year, a letter of recommendation, and a non-disparagement agreement that would prevent either party from speaking negatively about the other. Amy shook her head. This still falls short of addressing the full extent of damages. Additionally, we have concerns about the company's overall management practices that allowed this situation to occur. Marcus looked confused. What do you mean? My client was terminated without cause, without review, and without any adherence to the company's own stated HR policies, Amy explained. This suggests systemic issues beyond a single bad actor. I decided to speak up. For 8 years, I gave everything to this company. I believed in its mission and its leadership. What happened to me and others was not just unfair, it revealed fundamental flaws in how the company operates. Any resolution needs to address those flaws. The room fell silent as my words sank in. Finally, Michael leaned forward. What specific changes would you want to see? This was the opening I had been waiting for. First, a complete revision of termination protocols to require multiple levels of review for any director-level dismissal. Second, a formal succession planning process that prioritizes experience and performance over nepotism. Third, a leadership development program that properly prepares individuals before they are placed in positions of authority. My requests went beyond personal compensation to address the structural issues that had allowed the disaster to occur. The board members exchanged glances, seemingly surprised by the scope of my demands. After a brief private consultation, Michael returned with an unexpected revelation. We have recently discovered that Stephanie misrepresented her credentials. Her MBA was not completed as she claimed. This bombshell changed the dynamic of our negotiation. The company was now even more vulnerable, and they knew it. Marcus looked devastated. I had no idea. She showed me documentation that appeared legitimate. Amy seized the advantage. This strengthens our position regarding negligent oversight. The company placed someone with falsified credentials in a position to terminate experienced, high-performing employees. Over the next 2 hours, we negotiated terms that went far beyond my original expectations. The final agreement included 1 year's salary as severance, with full benefits, a significant additional payment for consulting services that effectively doubled the financial compensation, a formal public acknowledgement of my contributions to the company, implementation of all 3 policy changes I had requested, a commitment to rehire any wrongfully terminated employees who wished to return, the removal of Stephanie from any role within the company. The most surprising element came from Marcus himself. I also want to offer you a seat on our board of directors. We need your perspective and experience to rebuild what has been damaged. I was momentarily speechless. Amy requested time for us to discuss this unexpected offer privately. In the hallway, she was cautiously optimistic. A board position would give you significant influence over company direction and policies. However, it would also tie you to an organization that betrayed your trust. After careful consideration, I declined the board seat but accepted the rest of the terms. I appreciate the offer, but I think it is time for me to move in a new direction professionally. When we returned to the conference room, Marcus looked disappointed but nodded in understanding. We respect your decision, though the offer remains open should you change your mind. By late afternoon, the final documents were signed. As I stood to leave, Marcus asked for a moment alone. Amy gave me a questioning look, and I nodded my assent. Once others had left, Marcus spoke with genuine remorse. I built this company to create something that would outlast me, something my family could be proud of. In trying to give Stephanie an opportunity, I compromised the values this company was founded on. I will never make that mistake again. I hope you can rebuild, I said sincerely. 200 people depend on this company for their livelihoods. What will you do now? He asked. I smiled, feeling a newfound confidence. I am going to take some time to consider my options, but I will not be defined by this experience. As I walked out of Reynolds Innovations for what I thought was the final time, I felt a weight lifting. The settlement represented not just financial security but vindication. More importantly, the policy changes would protect others from experiencing what I and my colleagues had endured. Jessica and several other team members were waiting in the lobby. They had heard about the settlement and wanted to express their support. Their loyalty throughout the ordeal had been a bright spot in an otherwise dark period. Will you come back now? Jessica asked hopefully. No, I replied with a certainty that surprised even me. But I will always be grateful for your friendship and support. As I drove home that evening, I realized that what had begun as a professional catastrophe had evolved into an opportunity for transformation. The question now was what I would do with that opportunity. 6 months after the settlement, I stood in the reception area of Harrison Creative Strategies, watching as my team prepared for our 3rd client pitch of the week. The modern office space, with its open floor plan and collaborative work areas, hummed with the energy of creative professionals engaged in work they loved. Using the settlement money as startup capital, I had launched my own marketing firm specializing in authentic brand storytelling. Our tagline, Truth in Marketing, reflected both our business philosophy and my personal journey. Jessica Parker had been my first hire, joining as partner and creative director. Brian Mitchell came aboard soon after as our design director. Within months, we had assembled a team of 15 talented professionals many of whom had previously worked at Reynolds Innovations. Our client roster was growing steadily. We had won 2 significant accounts in competitive pitches against established agencies, including Lancaster Hotels, who had reached out within days of learning about my new venture. "The Lancaster presentation is ready for your final review," Jessica announced, interrupting my reflections. "Their CEO specifically requested that you lead the presentation tomorrow." I smiled, remembering how close that account had come to being lost during Stephanie's brief reign. "I will review it this afternoon." "How are we doing on the Bennett proposal?" "On track for submission next week," Jessica replied. "Brian has some brilliant concepts that align perfectly with their brand identity." As Jessica returned to her team, I took a moment to appreciate how far we had come in such a short time. The betrayal that had once threatened to define my professional identity had instead become the catalyst for something better. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Amy Goldstein, who had become both my attorney and friend. "Lunch next week, have updates on the other cases." After our successful settlement, Amy had represented several other former Reynolds employees, securing favorable outcomes for each. She had also become our company's legal counsel, guiding us through the formation of the business and reviewing our client contracts. I confirmed our lunch date and returned to my office to prepare for an afternoon of client calls. On my desk sat a business magazine featuring an article about Reynolds Innovations. According to industry sources, the company had implemented significant structural changes following our settlement. Marcus had stepped back from day-to-day operations, becoming chairman, while appointing a well-respected industry veteran as CEO. The board had been expanded to include more independent directors, and the company had instituted the leadership development program I had proposed. These changes did not erase what had happened, but they suggested that some good had come from the painful experience. The company was reportedly rebuilding its client base and had rehired several of the employees who had been wrongfully terminated. As for Stephanie, the article mentioned only that she had pursued other opportunities. Through mutual connections, I had heard she was working for a small startup in a junior position with appropriate supervision. Perhaps the experience had taught her valuable lessons about leadership and accountability. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected email from Marcus Reynolds. The subject line read simply, "Thank you. Rachel, I wanted to reach out on the 6-month anniversary of your departure to express my continued regret for what happened and my gratitude for the changes you insisted upon. They have made us a stronger, more responsible organization. I see your new firm is thriving, and I am genuinely happy for your success. You deserved better from us, and I will always consider your forced departure my greatest failure as a leader. Wishing you continued success, Marcus." I read the email twice before responding with a brief but sincere acknowledgement. The anger I had once felt toward Marcus had faded, replaced by a complex mixture of emotions that included understanding and even a measure of compassion. He had made a terrible mistake born of paternal blindness, but he had also taken responsibility and worked to make amends. That evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I paused to watch my team collaborating on a project. There was laughter, animated discussion, and the unmistakable energy of people engaged in meaningful work. This was the culture I had always tried to foster at Reynolds, now brought to life in a company that bore my name. The journey from wrongful termination to successful entrepreneur had taught me lessons I would never forget. I had learned that professional value cannot be diminished by someone else's poor judgment. I had discovered reserves of resilience I never knew I possessed. Most importantly, I had learned that sometimes the worst experiences lead to the best opportunities if we have the courage to pursue them. As I walked to my car, I felt a profound gratitude for the path that had brought me here. The betrayal had been painful, but the freedom and fulfillment I now experienced were worth every difficult moment. My story is still unfolding, but I know this chapter has made me stronger, wiser, and more compassionate as a leader. I will never take my team for granted or make decisions that compromise their dignity and worth. That is the legacy of my experience, and it shapes every aspect of how I build my company and my future. If you have ever faced betrayal or injustice in your professional life, I hope my story gives you courage. Sometimes what feels like an ending is really just the beginning of something better than you could have imagined. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that setbacks can become setups for greater success. Have you ever experienced unfair treatment at work? How did you handle it? Drop your stories in the comments below, and let us create a community of support for professional resilience. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember your worth is never determined by how others treat you but by how you respond to that treatment.